Okay, yeah, so I think we start our next session here. So this is going to be the session on manipulation, and I'm very happy to have Universal Robots here in this session as a physical presentation here in Fraunhofer, IPA in Stuttgart, and they are going to update us on news on the Universal Robots driver. So I'm very happy to have you here, Rune from Universal Robots, and Felix from FZI. So you're both collaborating on the driver, and we're really happy to hear about the news.
All right, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, as Christoph just said, we've developed the Universal Robots driver since a couple of years together. We started with a ROS-I driver in 2018, I think, and then migrated to a ROS-2 driver, which we have been available since late 2020, beginning of 2021. And today we'd like to tell you a bit what we've done over the last year, since the last time we presented here at ROS-I conference in 21. And the biggest thing we promised last time are the topics on binary releases. So if we have binary releases, obviously it's easier for users to install the driver and to actually use it, and not to have to compile everything from source. But this is something we put strong effort into. And to give you an overview of the state of that, we can look at this little matrix here. These are only a couple of the packages related to the whole environment. So we have the messages, the description, the driver itself, and so on. And as you can see, we've put a lot of effort to get that available for every currently supported ROS distribution. So we have melodic, noetic, foxy, humble, and rolling. I put out galactic already since that's end of line. However, we do have a galactic release in place as well as for the humble or foxy release, but I just let that out for the moment. And what you can see is that there are still a couple of things missing. Like for melodic and noetic, we're still missing the Euro driver, the Euro calibration package, and for example, the controller stopper. So these are all the repository or the packages living inside of the driver's repository. And this is not that we've just been lazy. It's basically almost released. It's currently being held back in the process of being included into the ROS distro. Basically, because there's been some discussion whether the package name controller stopper is a bit too generic or not. It's meant to be a generic node, so this is why we chose this generic name. But that's something that has to be resolved, hopefully in the next few days or weeks, and then we should be good to go to have a binary release for everything. What you can also see is that, for example, for Gazebo, we do not have binary releases in place currently for ROS2. We don't have support for Foxy and Gazebo at the moment, although we're merging things into the description currently to make it available there as well. We did have a working Gazebo simulation and ignition simulation for for Humble and Rolling at some point. No, not Humble, sorry, for Galactic and Rolling. However, that seems not to work on Humble and Rolling at the moment. We're currently looking into that, so that might be getting better at some point as well. What you can also see, like in the lower right corner, that for rolling, there's currently a couple of things missing. That's how it is in rolling. Sometimes things get broken. So as it happened, we also got thrown out of the distribution with the next last sync. We will be back in the next sync, and Move It is currently also having some troubles releasing. So this is always something changing, but we try to keep Foxy and Hubble stable all the time and putting a lot of effort into that. So also, we have developed a couple of new features, which I will present you here at a glance. So the common denominator of both drivers, ROS-I and ROS-2, is the client library, which basically abstracts everything that we talk to the robot in a non-ROS interface that can be used then by ROS-I, ROS-2, or even some other application layers. So what we've done, for example, we've taken care that we can, first of all, start what we have as a driver then without the robot being booted. So before, you had to make sure the robot was booted before, otherwise you were getting errors at startup. So this has been fixed now. It's possible now to first start the driver and then boot the robot, although in the case of the driver, then your controller starters timeout and stuff like that. But we've done that also, that we could wait for a longer time for the driver, which is, if you need that, you can do it now. Then a couple of really new cool thing is that we have introduced a command interface. So especially for E-series robots, there had been the trouble that if you want to send some commands to the robot, like setting IOs or sending custom script commands or stuff like that. The robot needs to be in remote control mode. This has been causing some issues with people because it's not that obvious at a first glance. And so this is something we try to improve as a user experience. So with that new scripting interface, you won't have to set the robot into remote control mode in order to do such things. However, you'll have to make sure that the program is actually running. What we currently also already have if you're using it as a ROS driver to actually move the robot. So currently we put in support for zeroing the force torque sensor, setting the payload, and also set the tool voltage. There's ongoing work about these three things. I'll talk in a second as well. And also we've put a lot of effort, basically students from UR did a lot of effort into making more unit tests. So our client library is currently about 80% tested, I think. So we're pretty confident that things get more stable, more tested in order to further increase robustness for everyone. In the ROS1 driver, we are almost there at the binary release. We first had to put a lot of effort into releasing the description, which has been hanging around for a couple of years. So we're pretty happy that this worked out now. Then we have the command interface in place in the library, and that's been integrated into the ROS1 driver already. So we can zero the force torque sensor, set the payload, and set tool voltage, as I just said. And also we've been correcting the range transformation. So especially on the E-series, if you have a TCP offset, for example, and the range could be published in the wrong frame. So this is now fixed, which is a really cool thing. And we do no longer depend on the description fork. So I don't know whether you're aware of that, but a lot of years you had to use the fork of your description from my personal repo, which was not an ideal situation. And so we're really happy that this got merged into mainline and even released as a binary package. So we don't have any upstream dependencies anymore that you need to build from source. For the ROS2 driver, it looks rather similar. We had the binary release. It's been a while, but it's new since the last time we talked here. We are still working on reducing the feature gap to ROS1, which I'll also come to in a second again. We have a startup script for your sim. Rune will tell a bit about that later as well, so that you can easily start a simulated robot which behaves like a real robot without putting too much effort into that. We did some overall robustification where a lot of stuff from the library also comes in handy, obviously. And since there is a documentation system for ROS in place now, since ROS Humble, we're happy that all of our documentation that we now have to get started and so on, and some explanations, is now in the ROS2 documentation infrastructure. So it's docs.ros.org/rolling package euro driver. That's also linked from the repository's README. I think it's not probably linked from index.ros.org at the moment. I don't know whether that's something that's going to change in the near future. Ongoing work currently is that we support dual ARM setup. At the moment, that's due to some port restrictions, not possible to spawn two drivers to two different robots at the moment on the same PC. We're working on that currently. So this is hopefully one of the things being done in the near future. For feature gap between ROS1 and ROS2, the top two I've already talked about. We cannot send custom script commits scripts to the robot at the moment on ROS2, which is something we'll have to look into deeper a bit more, because that's a restriction that we have from the current ROS2 control framework, but we'll find a way there as well. In ROS1, we had this robot state helper that helped you switching on the robot, releasing the brakes, and so on with one action call. This has not been ported, just to time restrictions, basically. And the other new features that we have from the script interface and the client library are also not yet integrated into the ROS2 driver. Also, we don't have the method of handing back control to the robot in the ROS2 driver. So if you have like this external control node running on the robot, you can hand back control to the robot, that you have a program running in Polyscope, so directly on the robot controller that then gets returned to, and you can do something else there without ROS. And the transform of the force torque measurements, as I said earlier, for the ROS1 driver is also not available for the ROS2 driver. And also the tool frame of the robot is not transparently sent to the ROS ecosystem right now, which was rather handy in the past. This is not the whole feature list. You can find the whole feature list also in our documentation, which I linked there as well. So a really nice thing is we're currently working on a tutorials package, because yes, we know more documentation is always better. I think Rajesh also said it this morning. It would be nice if there were more documentation of how actually to integrate things, how to start things, and so on. We do have a place for that. As you've seen before, there's a lot of packages involved. So we decided to have like one central space where we can write documentation on more system integration stuff. So currently we have examples in place for ROS1 regarding setting up a custom work cell and a dual arm setup for ROS1. We're planning on doing things for ROS2, and I've talked to Rajesh also this morning. It would be nice also if there's some contributions of existing tutorials, for example. And one really interesting thing for us is what would you actually like to have as a tutorial? Because for us as developers, it's everything is clear how to start up things, and it's hard to sometimes think of what is actually needed the most. So if you have any suggestions, please let us know. We'll be here to talk to, or just directly open up an issue. Or even better, write something yourself and make a pull request. That's obviously the best way to get something in there. So yeah, we'll be happy to discuss that further. One other thing we at FZI have been working on recently, so just to disclaim, this is work from FZI, nothing to do with Universal Robots. We have the problem that in ROS2 especially, we had trouble interfacing robotique to finger grippers. There seems to be no real ROS2 driver available at the moment. However, there's a really nice EuroCap that you can activate the driver on the teach panel and use it that for. And the nice thing is this EuroCap also exposes a socket interface to the outside world. And so we wrote a small package that is able to talk to that socket connection, so you can transparently activate and use the gripper from ROS2. As I wrote, it's not yet available, I'm sorry. It will be on that GitHub repository. It's just in our internal release process at the last stage currently. So I hope that we get it released this year. Everything is done, it's working, it's just our internal release process. And so this is my overview from the features that we've currently implemented, and now Rune will also give you some more interesting information. Thanks.
Yeah. So regarding the simulation, as Felix just get a teaser on. So during our process of maturing the driver and so on, we of course also need the CI, so continuous integration pipeline flowing and testing what we do. And for this, we have made a Docker with the URSIM inside. We have put the image into a Docker hub, so it's ready for use. It's pretty useful both for CI, but also just for spinning up a simulator. And to make it even easier on ROS2, we'll also make a ROS2 call for starting it up. Yeah. Already seems to be okay, downloaded it. So kind of so last year we also kind of was putting out some what is our future direction, at least for the near future. And we were saying reliability there. And this year we have going a bit further. I think reliability is pretty okay actually now on the driver. It seems to, at least from the issues we are receiving and so on, have moved a bit to some other kind of challenges. So now we will try to kind of go after the star called reduce real-time requirements, putting more to the robot controller, and also extend documentation, you can say, especially with the examples. Then, okay, in the very short term, there's these extending, or we can say exporting some of the functionalities the robot already has, free drive, force mode, and also the capabilities of stop when it hits something, not in a safety manner, but much faster for kind of doing some processes and using the force torque sensor out there in the tool. And please note, input is actually very valuable assets for us, and either through GitHub, putting in an issue, or writing to us on the email ros@universalrobots.com. I will receive it then. Yeah, so as you heard this morning, my colleague Mihao was kind of exposing that this is what we can do today with the driver. We can put up a communication that can use the robot as an actuator, from the ROS side, ROS2. But with the new stuff that we were asking beta testers on, it's actually possible to, you can say, make some kind of parallel program in the robot to talk with a gripper. So if you don't have a driver in the gripper, or for the gripper in the API ROS2, then you're actually able to make some kind of workaround program, because now the UR script can support that, setting an IO on and off, using, interacting with a UI cap, with the nodes. And for the people that don't know what UI caps is, it's a capability for our, you can say, customers, partners, and so on. It's to develop a third-party plugin to the robot. The SDK is, by the way, free for download. Welcome to play around with it and make a business out of it as well. So it could be a workaround for some of these tooling challenges for the robot. Yeah. And of course, thank you a lot for the community, and we have just also put our student workers as well. They're pretty helpful asset to us, and ROS Industrial community as well. I would say especially thank you to Heis and Nadja for helping us also maintaining, and making the binary releases possible for the description and messaging and so on packages, and Picnic for also very good interaction. Yeah. And I kind of believe I will get this question here. And of course, it will be a product in the family, just like all the others. So if you need it, then let me know. Yeah? Questions?